So it's been over a week and I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max as my main device. Not even 24 hours later, I hopped on a plane to Dubai and I learned a lot about this phone and Apple themselves. You know who else can learn a lot from this video? Our sponsor, nobody. Now I want to mention that this is the first Pro Max device I enjoyed using due to its slightly smaller design from previous generations. I always felt like the Pro Maxes were a little bit too wide, but this generation, or maybe since I've been using larger Android phones this entire year, like the S23 Ultra, the Pro Max is just the most comfortable iPhone I've held around this time around. I usually elect to go for the regular Pro model, which you can see here in the natural titanium, but the Pro Max is really not that big of a phone this time around. Just wanted to start off with that. So on paper, not much has changed from the 14 Pro series. Matter of fact, I could show you the front display and you probably couldn't even tell that this is an iPhone 15. But it's not when you start using it day to day. The best way to describe the iPhone 15 Pro series is that it's really just the iPhone 15 4S. The biggest selling point Apple's making this year is the titanium, and I'm sure most of the internet has seen Jerry-rig everything pop a hole in the back with his thumbs. I don't know how strong his thumbs are, but I'm not trying to push that hard into the back of my phone that I paid $1,000 for, so I'm just going to leave it at this pressure. With that being said, there has been talks of, having the iPhone 15 Pro Max in your back pocket and it being a liability, but I really don't think it's that much of a concern. I've dropped this phone multiple times and you can probably see from the overhead camera some of the scratches and dings that I've gotten, as you can see here. With that being said, the claims of this being more durable than previous generation iPhones, I want to say is probably smoke and mirrors, especially when it comes to the Pro Max model, simply because of this hole that apparently is in the back where the Apple logo is. But the chances of you actually breaking your device like a jerry-rig everything is fairly slim. Like, this isn't the iPhone 6 Plus Bendgate fiasco we had nearly a decade ago. Most people are probably gonna have a case on anyway, so that would also only reinforce the back of the phone, so not a huge worry for most people. Now, I've beaten a dead horse, or I think it's I've beaten a horse dead. Nope, it's definitely beaten a dead horse. Anyway, let's talk about the action button, which is another new addition in the Pro lineup. It's a love-hate relationship, just like when my exes texted me out of the blue and then they turn into a green message. Initially, I hated it, but after discovering the power of shortcuts, the action button is one of my favorite upgrades to the iPhone in most recent years, even more than the USB-C that I'll get into in a second. So the default options are, the silent mode, focus mode, flashlight, and all those other options. They're great, but shortcuts is just the icing on the cake. For example, unfortunately, my Tesla didn't make the cut to have a car unlock and lock through my phone. Now with the action button, I can just call the Tesla shortcut and I can immediately lock or unlock my car. Same goes for my smart door. I can immediately unlock it just by holding the action button. And another example is I use the Todoist app. So if I want to immediately add a task that I think of, I can just hold down the action button and I can be prompted to add a task. Like, the amount of customizations you have with shortcuts is endless. Trust me when I say spend like 5 or 10 minutes in the shortcut apps and you'll probably never use any of the default settings you have with the action button. I genuinely didn't even know how powerful or how useful shortcuts were until iOS 17 and the addition of the action button, and it's a shame because I probably would have been using it a lot more. So the only thing I really can comment on the action button is that it would have been nice to have multiple options, like a double tap, a triple tap, but I do get the confusion of the haptic feedback that it gives you. Overall, the action button is a nice improvement to the iPhone lineup. Now let's talk about the USB-C. So the Pro models are special because they come with USB 3 speeds. Now, if you're scratching your head after I said USB 3, it probably is not going to affect you that the older iPhones have USB 2, but just know that 3 is higher than 2. If I can do math correctly, yes. So anyway, the USB-C came up pretty clutch when it came to my mom's birthday because I was able to just plug in my phone via the adapter, USB-C adapter to HDMI, and my phone was projected onto a screen with zero lag. That is something that I've been wanting from iPhone for many years. I don't have to depend on airplane if we're going to be talking about Apple people here. Yeah, just being able to just plug in USB-C devices and adapters and just natively have my phone be casted anywhere that I want. Apple does say be careful about third-party cables and such, but I would really only be concerned if you're getting extremely cheap cables. I've used this phone with various cables, various power blocks, and I've had no issues whatsoever. I'm gonna have an asterisk somewhere on the screen because this is like a 1 week review, so take that with a grain of salt, but knowing how the USB-C standard is and how it's been matured for, I don't even know, a very long time, you're gonna be okay using a lot of USB-C cables. It's really just more of like a liability warranty thing. So let's hop back on the topic of titanium because there has been some craze over the fingerprints. I have the white titanium on my right and then I have the natural titanium on the left. Now, I haven't really noticed any fingerprints, if any at all. In the sunlight, yes, I would say it's more noticeable, but to be completely honest, it's really not that dramatic on what you see for the fingerprints. Compared to stainless steel where it's more shiny, the fingerprints there are much more noticeable and more prominent, but using this finish of the titanium that they did, you're really not gonna notice the fingerprints too much, especially on the lighter model. So once again, your mileage may vary. Moving on to another craze, let's talk about how hot the iPhone 15 Pro Max models get, just like this past summer. Although it's October and it's still high 80 degrees and leaves haven't fallen yet. What is the world coming to? Anyway, I already made a video on the whole overheating debacle, and Apple has since made an announcement about providing software improvements addressing said issues. Everything I said in that video was pretty much what Apple came out to say, with them saying things like, the device may feel warmer during the first few days after setting it up or restoring it because of an increased background activity. People are saying that their phone is hot just sitting on the home screen. Like, what are you doing? Like, did you just set up your device? Another issue involves some recent updates to third-party apps that are causing them to overload the system. Like, people are saying, Instagram is really hot to use. Well, it's iOS 17. I won't say it's iOS 17, but you know, a lot of apps are unoptimized on the latest OS, so just wait like a couple weeks. It's almost like Apple and I have common sense on 17 years of software updates. I mean, I don't have 17 years myself. I just wanted to boost my ego since I'm basically Apple's PR department. Now, battery life has improved day to day. The Screen Time app recorded 9 hours of screen on time, but I was able to go from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on a single charge. If you guys want to see the day in life video I made, it's pretty lame, I can, but once again, it sucks. But if you want to see it, hey, let me know down in the comments below. Apple does claim that you can have 29 hours of video playback. Definitely varies on your settings, like the brightness, whether it's streamed or downloaded. So I'll give a conservative estimate and say you're most likely gonna last 1 day watching content on this thing the proper way being like you're streaming it or you're watching it via the internet. If it's downloaded on a very low brightness, you're probably gonna get 29 hours, but most people are not gonna be watching it like that. But the capacity is there if you have those settings. Now, the biggest conversation for these phones are the cameras. Trust me, I took a lot of photos and videos with this phone, and I'll have comparisons with the S23 Ultra soon, but these cameras are fantastic. It is a bit of a learning curve using the multiple lenses on the 1X, but the 5X is just so much more fluid and stabilized when you zoom in. I don't know why I'm looking outside, but it's just because I'm thinking about how amazing it was to use the 5X lens on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I do have one complaint with the iPhone camera and video, and while I enjoy the photos and videos it takes, they just seem too artificial at times. For example, look at my dad giving a speech. I won't say which one is which, but from the people I've asked, they prefer the one with the sunset background. But in real life, it was much more subdued than that. And I'd argue that the non-sunset version was the more true to life one, but the sunset background, one can argue, is more aesthetically pleasing. And that one would be the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It feels like smartphones have figured out that, you know, cameras are good, but we're moving to like this next generation of photos where we're just trying to see how artificial we can make them while still trying to make them seem real life. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it just doesn't seem like the photos we capture aren't like the raw photos we want, that they're just artificially boosting them to see or trying to guess what we would want. I'm butchering this. I'll have a separate video on it. Once again, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look amazing. It just looks different from what you actually took. It's a preference thing. It's not a deal breaker for me, but just something you should notice when it comes to cameras. Top of the class, as always, take a look.
Ooh, this heat.
Mobile gamer by any means, but I am 900 elo in chess and I'm stuck and that's all I can play. The only thing that gets hot is me when I hang my pieces or when I randomly get checkmated, so I'll leave it at that. But I do want to give credit over to Apple because they have shown off that this can play AAA games, and people say that this can take down Nintendo, but I mean, only time will tell. It's Nintendo, let's not forget their household name. I'm a bit skeptical on that statement, but hey, still want to give kudos over to Apple for being able to play AAA games that you see in like a PS5 in a device this small. So going on to the topic about specs, it has a 3nm process, has 73 kajillion transistors, and I'm going to stop talking about specs because you're probably going to click off the video. Just know that the phone is faster than last generation, hip hip hooray. The phone has better cameras than last generation, hip hip hooray. We still have no SIM card in the US, hip hip. Just kidding. Speaking about that, so when you land in the UAE, they give you a free SIM card and 1 GB of free data. As you can see here, right? It is amazing. So glad they give this to you. Now, some people might say that this is spyware. Listen, if you live in the US, you've been spied on since out the womb. We probably quite literally invented spyware ourselves. Anyway, I can't even use the SIM card because there is no physical SIM on the iPhone 15 Pro models here in the US. Everywhere else in the world, there is a physical SIM card tray. Not in the US models. I still do not know why. I will complain about this until I am blue in the face. People are saying that, oh, you're just complaining. This is like the headphone jack. Who really cares? Who uses SIM cards? I do, and clearly the rest of the world still uses SIM cards if Apple is still producing multiple millions of iPhones with SIM card slots. And Apple, I'm saying right now, I would actually, as an Apple customer, I would actually pay $50 to $100 more for an iPhone with the SIM card. I'm being serious. Like, it is that big of a deal for me, especially as an international traveler. I truly don't know why this is a US thing. Someone in Apple can probably give me a reason, but you know, if you guys know, please let me know down in the comments below. It really just seems like the US is getting shafted here in this whole eSIM thing. But it's the future. So I can give you guys a quick speaker test on the phone. Speakers sound great. I'd say they're on par. I threw my S23 Ultra, but the speakers are on par with the S23 Ultra. They're very loud, very clear, well balanced. Not much more I can say for a flagship by Apple. So the last category I want to talk about is brightness. I do think we are getting a little bit crazy with the brightnesses on the smartphones like we are with the photos. And the screen is bright. And I don't want to say it's bright in the sense of, oh, you know, this is 2000 nits, it's super bright outside. No, it is bright indoors. Like when I use this in bed and it's like up a few notches on the brightness, I'm like, this is too bright for me. So I have to use this phone with the brightness cranked all the way down. It's that bright. So in terms of, you know, smartphone brightness, calibration, it is very bright. You're not gonna have any problem seeing this phone. Indoor, outdoor, you can probably have your eyes closed and still see what's on this phone on max brightness. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up the iPhone 15 Pro Max review, and I've got to say, I've had an amazing time with this phone. I didn't really touch on the iPhone 15 Pro model, and that's simply because it's essentially the same thing as the 15 Pro Max. You're just not getting that 5x zoom, you're only getting that 3x zoom. And overall, it's essentially the same device. I don't think there's that much difference between the two. The battery life is going to be a little bit shot because of the smaller size. I would say it's also more one-handed use when you're using this device. But to be completely honest, I simply, after being a hater of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, or I should say the Pro Max lineup for so long, I think the phone I would choose if I had to upgrade to a new iPhone in this day and age would be the Pro Max model. The first couple of days were a bit rough, but it got much better day after day. I'd say probably after day number 3. Once again, the changes from the 14 Pro are subtle, but they're subtle enough. Is it subtle or subtle? Subtle? I'm saying the same thing. They're subtle enough for you to notice if you were to go back to an older iPhone Pro. So initially, I started reaching for the Lightning cable, but now it's just USB-C, and I love it. I initially had the action button set to the silent switch because that's what I've been accustomed to all these years. But now I can unlock and lock my car or even my door. Initially, I used the only lens that was available to me on the 1x zoom, but now I'm more comfortable using all the lenses on the 15 Pro Max and even the 15 Pro. And when I go back to my iPhone 13 Pro, I'm just like, wow, there are those small things I used a lot that I didn't realize that I used in a day-to-day fashion. So, going off my unboxing, I still think that this is the best iPhone Apple has ever made. Some people might say it's the iPhone 4S, it's the iPhone 5S, it's the iPhone 6S. Personally, for me, I think the iPhone 6S is up there. But let's not kid ourselves, guys. Out of everything I just said, they were all on the S. And this is really just a 14S. And the S cycle has always been the most polished phones by Apple. You can call it what you want, Apple, 15, 16, 35, 75, doesn't matter. This is a 14S to me. With that being said, guys, hopefully you found this video informative. I appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. And as always, guys, hopefully I don't butcher up tossing these phones. Much love. That was clean. That was clean. On a first take. That was clean. That was clean. So I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max as my main device, and not even 24 hours later, I hopped on a plane to Dubai, and I learned a lot about this phone and Apple themselves. You know who else can learn a lot from this video? Our sponsor. It's terrible. Terrible, oh my God. I have the white titanium on my right, and then the left titanium. The white, I can't even speak. Moving on, voice crack. Moving on.